Before history was carved into stone, and before the memory of mankind found its voice, the world was a place of mystery, untouched by the weight of time. Skies stretched vast and unbroken, stars hung close enough to seem alive, and the earth was filled with a purity that has long since faded. Humanity lived in the simplicity of dawn, guided by instinct and awe, unaware that their quiet existence was being watched from above. Ancient writings speak of beings who observed the world with unblinking eyes, guardians sent from the heavens, radiant and wise, known as the Watchers. They watched not with cold distance but with fascination, for within humankind they saw the reflection of something divine and beautiful. Across the silence of eternity, the boundary between heaven and earth trembled. The Watchers, appointed to guide creation, began to gaze upon the sons and daughters of the world not merely as caretakers, but as admirers. The fire of curiosity stirred within them, a longing to touch, to teach, to share in the mortal experience. What began as holy observation became yearning, and from that yearning was born a decision that would alter the fate of the world forever. Their descent was not an act of defiance at first, but of desire, a desire to walk among the creatures they had once only watched from afar. The ancient texts tell of that moment as both magnificent and tragic. Light fell from the heavens like a rain of stars, and where it touched the mountains, the air shimmered with glory. Those who saw them stood in awe, believing gods had come to dwell among men. But what appeared as divine blessing carried the seeds of rebellion. For when immortals enter the realm of mortals, the order of creation trembles. The Watchers brought with them the knowledge of the heavens, wisdom meant for angels, not for mankind. They shared secrets of the earth, the stars, and the heart, unveiling mysteries never meant to be known too soon. That knowledge became both a gift and a curse. Humanity began to rise, to understand, to build, to dream. Yet within that rise came pride, envy, and desire for power. What was given as light soon burned as fire. The world before the great flood, once pure and harmonious, began to decay from within. Men learned to forge weapons from the earth. Women learned the arts of enchantment and beauty, and the innocent harmony between spirit and flesh began to break. The Watchers, who once sought to uplift, had unknowingly unleashed corruption that would echo through generations. As time passed, the heavens grew silent. The laughter of the Watchers faded, replaced by the sound of conflict and sorrow. The earth, burdened by violence, cried out beneath the weight of sin. The very beings who had once stood as bridges between heaven and earth had become the cause of the chasm between them. The great flood was approaching, a divine cleansing that would wash away the shadow that had fallen upon creation. Yet even as the storm gathered, one question remained. What did these celestial beings truly seek to teach humanity, and at what cost? Before the first drop of rain fell, before the waves consumed the land, the whispers of the Watchers echoed through time, warnings, regrets, and truths buried beneath myth. Their story is more than a tale of angels and men. It is a reflection of humanity's eternal hunger to reach beyond its limits, to seek knowledge without wisdom and light without reverence. If stories like this awaken your curiosity and move your spirit, remember to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Your voice keeps these mysteries alive, and your support helps bring more timeless stories to light. Light from the heavens once fell upon the mountains of the ancient world, and those who gazed upward at night felt the stirring of unseen eyes. The Watchers, radiant in their origin and bound by divine command, began to look upon the earth not as distant witnesses, but as yearning souls, drawn to what they were never meant to touch. Their descent was not an act of sudden rebellion, but the slow unraveling of celestial restraint. Each passing age deepened their fascination with humanity, whose fragile beauty mirrored something long forgotten within their immortal hearts. When the boundary separating heaven from earth weakened, the watchers crossed it, drawn by a love both wondrous and forbidden. Clouds parted over the highlands, and streaks of light descended like falling stars. Where they touched the earth, the air shimmered with a radiance that terrified and enthralled those who beheld it. Men and women who once worshipped the unseen now stood face to face with beings of indescribable presence. Their garments gleamed like molten gold, their voices carried both music and thunder, and their faces bore a beauty that defied human language. Awe filled the hearts of mortals, yet within that awe grew desire. And within desire, corruption began to take root. The watchers had chosen to become visible, and that choice altered creation itself. Curiosity became passion, and passion became covenant. They looked upon the daughters of men and found in them the reflection of life's mystery. What began as admiration turned into longing, and that longing bound them to the world below. Love, stripped of divine order, became obsession. To touch what was mortal meant surrendering immortality's sanctity. The watchers bound themselves with oaths, swearing loyalty to each other in their decision to dwell among humanity. On the summit of Mount Hermon, they sealed their pact beneath the open sky, calling upon the stars as witnesses. Their leader, known in the old writings as Semjaza, trembled not with fear, but with the knowledge that there would be no turning back. As the stars wheeled above them, a veil lifted between realms. Humanity now shared its world with celestial wanderers who had cast aside their station. The purity of their light dimmed, replaced by the glow of desire. Their wings, once symbols of obedience, now bore the weight of disobedience. They walked among men not as messengers, but as those seeking to build a kingdom outside divine order. Villages became sanctuaries of adoration, for mortals mistook the watchers for gods. They taught language, writing, and art, shaping culture as they once shaped the clouds. Yet beneath these gifts hid the shadow of rebellion. Voices of heaven grieved at their descent. The archangels who remained faithful looked down with sorrow, for they understood that love unbound by holiness turns into ruin. Still, the watchers did not see themselves as traitors. They saw beauty in human form and sought to share the brilliance of their realm. But each act of sharing became a distortion, each revelation a fracture in the balance between heaven and earth. Their descent, though driven by fascination, was also an echo of ancient pride. The same pride that once whispered to the first light-bearer that creation could be reshaped according to one's own will. The earth itself began to tremble under their presence. Skies burned with strange colors, rivers reflected unfamiliar light, and the seasons shifted in ways no man could explain. Mortals rejoiced at first, believing the gods had chosen to dwell among them, but joy soon mingled with dread. Power unrestrained brought wonder, but also terror. The watchers' love became possession, their guardianship turned to domination. Where they walked, kingdoms rose in splendor, yet beneath that splendor, violence brewed. Stories of their children began to spread. Giant offspring born from the union of heaven and earth. Villages whispered of monstrous strength and insatiable hunger. What was once divine curiosity now gave birth to corruption of body and spirit. The world, illuminated by forbidden fire, began to darken under its own brilliance. Still, within that tragedy lay a strange beauty. The watchers had not fallen entirely into darkness. Fragments of their celestial light lingered. They gazed upon what they had made, torn between awe and regret. They loved humanity too much to withdraw, yet too little to save it. Every act of kindness they offered carried the shadow of their rebellion, and every secret they revealed brought mankind closer to destruction. The descent of the divine was both gift and curse, a union of heaven's wonder with earth's frailty. In seeking to share the glory of their world, the watchers lost the purity of their own. Their feet were no longer on sacred ground, and the heavens above them grew silent. When the watchers walked among humanity, The boundaries between divine wisdom and earthly curiosity dissolved. They began to reveal the knowledge that once belonged only to the realm above. Mysteries of the stars, of metals, of beauty, of enchantments that touch the unseen. Each revelation brought progress and peril, for what was meant to be holy became corrupted by the desires of the flesh. Humanity listened with open hearts and eager minds, unaware that every secret carried a cost. Azazel, among the most daring of the Watchers, taught men to forge weapons from the earth's hidden veins. Iron and bronze, once buried in silence, were drawn forth and shaped into tools of both creation and destruction. Blades gleamed beneath the sun, and power spread through the hands of men. What began as craftsmanship turned to warfare, and the soil drank the blood of brothers. Women adorned themselves with the arts of ornamentation, wearing colors that mirrored the dawn. Beauty became a mask for pride, and pride became the root of ruin. Knowledge of the heavens followed. The Watchers taught the motions of the stars, the cycles of the moon, and the secret language of constellations. Humanity learned to read the sky as scripture, believing that fate could be written in its light. The gift of observation became the bondage of superstition, for men began to worship the creation rather than the Creator. What once inspired wonder turned into idolatry, and the heavens were filled not with prayer, but with confusion. Enchantments and signs followed next. The Watchers whispered of charms and incantations that could bend unseen powers to human will. They taught how to call upon spirits, how to heal and how to harm. The line between medicine and sorcery blurred, and hearts once pure became enthralled by the illusion of control. Knowledge once radiant became a labyrinth of shadows. Humanity, once guided by innocence, now held power too vast to wield without consequence. Each generation absorbed their teachings, passing them as sacred inheritance. Cities grew, adorned with symbols that reflected celestial mysteries. Temples rose in honor of the Watchers, adorned with carvings of wings and eyes that never closed. Mankind had become a reflection of heaven's wisdom, but stripped of heaven's obedience. The earth glowed with enlightenment, yet trembled beneath the weight of arrogance. The Watchers themselves began to change. Their brilliance faded into a dim glow, like embers cooling after the flame. The more they shared, the more their essence dimmed. The purity of divine order was consumed by the very knowledge they bestowed. They became wanderers between realms, neither fully divine nor fully mortal, bound to the corruption they had sown. Yet humanity continued to seek, reaching higher, delving deeper, hungry for more. The thirst for understanding became an unquenchable fire. What was once revelation became addiction, and within that fire, civilizations began to rise. Sumer, Egypt, Babylon, each bearing the echo of the Watchers' teachings. Their symbols survived even as their forms vanished, their wisdom transformed into myth. Heaven watched in sorrow, for the harmony once woven into creation now trembled on the edge of chaos. What the Watchers had taught was not entirely evil. The corruption lay not in the knowledge itself, but in the hearts of those who received it. Humanity stood at the threshold of greatness, yet its steps were guided by pride rather than reverence. Whispers of rebellion reached beyond the stars, and the divine council prepared its response. The balance between heaven and earth had been broken, and the flood of knowledge would soon give way to the flood of judgment. When the Watchers took human wives, the union gave birth to beings of immense strength and stature, known in ancient writings as the Nephilim. These giants walked the earth as living symbols of divine rebellion, carrying the essence of heaven within mortal flesh. They grew swiftly, towering over men, consuming not only the food of the earth but the spirit of it. Legends describe their voices as thunder and their eyes as flame. They were neither fully human nor fully angelic, but something in between, creations born of forbidden love. Their presence reshaped the world. Lands trembled under their steps, and cities bowed before their might. Humanity, once the master of creation, now became servant to its own offspring. The Nephilim ruled through fear and power, their appetites unrestrained, their hearts devoid of mercy. The balance of life began to tilt toward chaos, and the cries of the oppressed reached the heavens. What had begun as fascination between two realms now threatened the very order of existence. Stories passed down through generations speak of battles between these giants and the men who resisted them. Heroes rose to confront the terror, but even their courage faltered before such beings. The Nephilim were worshipped as gods, their names carved into stone, their likenesses towering above temples and mountains. Yet their hunger grew, not just for food, but for dominion. The world became a playground of cruelty, where bloodshed was a spectacle, and power the only law. Beneath their splendor hid torment. The Nephilim bore within them a restless spirit, the conflict of two natures that could never reconcile. The divine spark within them longed for the purity of its origin, while their mortal bodies craved the earth. This inner war drove them to madness. Violence became their release, and the world groaned under their fury. The soil drank their rage, and the air thickened with their cries. Humanity began to despair. The teachers who once brought knowledge had now become rulers of destruction, and their children had turned paradise into a battlefield. Villages vanished, forests burned, and oceans darkened with sorrow. Yet even amid this ruin, fragments of beauty persisted, the fading memory of what the Watchers had once been before corruption took hold. Ancient songs speak of angels who wept at the sight of what their children had become. The Watchers themselves, now filled with regret, looked upon the Nephilim with sorrow and fear. They had created not a bridge between heaven and earth, but a chasm that threatened to swallow both. Their pride had given birth to abominations, and their rebellion had sown devastation across creation. The balance had been shattered beyond repair, and divine justice stirred. The time of mercy was giving way to the time of reckoning. Angels were sent to bind the fallen, and the decree of judgment began to echo through the firmament. Before the floodwaters would come, before the cleansing of the earth, the Nephilim ruled as shadows of power and sorrow. Their monuments would crumble, their names would fade into myth, but their memory would remain as a warning to every generation that followed. The world had tasted the fruit of forbidden union, and the cost was too great to bear. Silence fell over creation when the cries of the earth reached the heavens. Violence had become the heartbeat of mankind, and the harmony that once filled the world was now drowned in corruption. The Watchers, who had descended with light in their eyes, looked upon the devastation they had caused and felt the shadow of divine wrath closing in. Their brilliance had become a curse, their love a wound upon the earth. Mountains echoed with their lament, for they knew that the decree had gone forth. Justice would descend from above, and none would escape it. They descended not with malice, but with sorrow, for they carried the weight of divine justice in their hands. The Watchers who had once taught mankind were now to be taught a lesson that eternity itself would remember. Chains of fire and stone awaited those who had turned from the light, and the abyss was prepared as their dwelling. Voices that once sang praises now cried out for mercy. The Watchers fell to their knees, pleading that their punishment might be delayed, that their children might be spared, that their rebellion might somehow be forgiven. Yet justice cannot be undone by tears. The decree was spoken through Enoch, the righteous man who walked with God and did not taste death. Through him, the message reached those who had fallen. Their cries would not be heard until the appointed time, and their place would be beneath the earth, bound in darkness until the day of final reckoning. Mountains split as the ground opened beneath their feet. Chains forged by celestial power clasped around their limbs, glowing with the light of judgment. The watchers who once commanded the stars now found themselves imprisoned beneath the soil they had corrupted. Their voices faded into the depths, their presence sealed away from the world above. Yet their knowledge, their influence, could not be fully erased. Fragments of their teachings lingered in human memory, shaping generations long after their fall. The Nephilim, their offspring, were not spared. As the waters of judgment began to gather, their power faded, and their might turned against them. They fought among themselves, devouring their own kind in desperation. Their roar filled the earth as the floodwaters rose, sweeping away their empires, their monuments, and their names. What had once been giants of renown became dust beneath the waves. Only echoes of their existence survived, carried through stories, carvings, and whispered myths of fallen gods. Above the waters, heaven wept. The Creator had not desired destruction, but restoration. Justice was not born of cruelty, but of compassion. For creation could not heal while corruption reigned. The imprisonment of the Watchers was an act of mercy as much as punishment, ensuring that their rebellion would not spread beyond redemption's reach. Bound in darkness, they awaited the time when all would be judged, and every hidden thing brought to light. Mankind, though cleansed by the flood, still carried within its soul the memory of forbidden fire. The teachings of the Watchers, though cursed, had taken root too deeply to be washed away completely. From the ashes of the old world, new civilizations would rise, carrying traces of that ancient wisdom. Even in their captivity, the lesson of their fall resounded through the ages. Knowledge without reverence leads only to ruin, and love that defies divine order becomes its own punishment. The story of their chains was written not only in the stones of the deep, but in the conscience of every generation that followed, a reminder of the fragile line between enlightenment and rebellion. Waters receded, and a new world emerged, washed, but not entirely cleansed. Mountains once submerged rose again, their peaks glistening beneath a newborn sun. Humanity began to rebuild, guided by memory, instinct, and the faint echoes of the knowledge that had survived. Though the Watchers lay bound beneath the earth, their influence still moved quietly through the hearts of men. The flood had erased their presence, but not their legacy. Whispers of the old wisdom resurfaced in the earliest post-Diluvian cultures. In the plains of Sumer, people began to chart the movements of the stars with remarkable precision. They spoke of beings who once descended from the sky to teach the secrets of the heavens. Temples dedicated to divine watchers appeared, adorned with winged figures whose gaze reached toward eternity. The art of metalworking reappeared, as if remembered from dreams. The same patterns of enchantment and mathematics, of sacred geometry and celestial law, emerged across distant lands with uncanny similarity. Egypt rose from the dust with monuments that defied time, built with an understanding of balance and alignment that echoed the teachings of the fallen. Priests spoke of gods who came from the stars, granting wisdom to the chosen. The architecture mirrored cosmic order, pyramids pointing heavenward like prayers carved in stone. Across the sands, symbols of the eye and the wing endured, silent testaments to an ancient knowledge that had outlived its source. In the cities of Babylon, mystics recorded the movements of the planets, weaving the patterns of heaven into the rhythm of human life. Astrology, born from the Watchers' teachings, became a bridge between the divine and the mortal. Yet what began as observation of creation turned into manipulation of fate. Knowledge once pure became the seed of sorcery. Mankind sought to control destiny through symbols of power, invoking forces beyond comprehension. Across the world, stories began to converge. Tales of gods who fell from the sky, of teachers who defied heaven, of kings descended from divine beings. Every culture held a fragment of the same ancient truth, each shaping it into its own myth. The names changed, but the essence remained. Wisdom that should have been sacred became a tool for ambition. Humanity remembered enough to build, yet forgot enough to destroy. Hidden within these myths lay warnings. Scribes wrote of floods, of celestial wars, of divine anger that once cleansed the earth. They spoke of watchers who were cast down for their pride. Still, curiosity endured, for the human heart could not resist the pull of mystery. Every discovery of the ancient world, every tablet, every symbol, bore the faint scent of that forbidden legacy. Civilizations flourished and fell, yet the same cycle continued. Kings sought the wisdom of the heavens to build empires, prophets called their people back to humility, and scholars searched the skies for signs of divine messages. The echo of the Watchers guided both science and superstition, brilliance and blasphemy. Their knowledge became the double-edged gift that shaped the destiny of nations. The flood had silenced their voices, but could not erase their imprint upon creation. From language to law, from architecture to astronomy, the shadow of their influence persisted. Humanity, still reaching for the heavens, carried within its memory the spark once ignited by those who had fallen. The Watcher's legacy endured not as worship, but as warning, a whisper reminding every generation that knowledge without wisdom is a flame that consumes rather than illuminates. As centuries unfolded, the memory of the Watchers transformed from legend into spiritual conflict. What had begun as an event in the distant past became a battle that never ceased, not upon the Earth's surface, but within the unseen realm of the human soul. The knowledge once offered by celestial beings became the very weapon used in the struggle between light and darkness. Every act of seeking truth now carried within it the echo of that ancient temptation, to know as the gods know without the heart of the divine. Within the mind, the war for wisdom began. Angels whispered guidance toward humility and balance, while the remnants of the fallen urged pride and ambition. Humanity stood at the crossroads between revelation and rebellion, where every discovery could become either a path to enlightenment or a descent into ruin. This unseen war was not fought with swords or fire, but through ideas, desires, and choices. The battlefield was thought itself, and the stakes were eternal. Knowledge continued to expand. From the building of cities to the birth of philosophy, humanity stretched its understanding of the universe. Yet, with each new insight came a familiar danger. Pride whispered that the divine was no longer necessary, that man could rise by his own will. The same whisper that once led the Watchers to fall now found a home in human hearts. What was once celestial arrogance had taken root in the soil of the mind. Religious teachers and prophets throughout history spoke of this unseen struggle. They described angels who guided humanity toward truth and spirits that deceived, masquerading as wisdom. The war for knowledge became a reflection of the cosmic conflict that began before the flood. Every prayer, every act of learning, every moment of moral choice was part of that vast and silent war. Empires that rose through the pursuit of knowledge often fell through the corruption it brought. Scholars who sought truth sometimes uncovered forces they could not control. Power drawn from knowledge without reverence consumed entire nations. Yet within the same pursuit lay beauty, art and understanding that revealed glimpses of the divine. Knowledge was never the enemy. The heart that wielded it determined whether it became light or shadow. Through ages of enlightenment and darkness, humanity wrestled with the same question that once faced the Watchers. What is the rightful place of wisdom? Can it be used without falling into pride? Can one reach toward the stars without forgetting the source of their light? These questions shaped the destiny of civilizations, as philosophers and mystics alike sought the balance between divine revelation and human curiosity. Even now, the war for wisdom continues. It lives in the conflict between faith and arrogance, between compassion and control. Every invention, every discovery, every search for truth becomes part of this ancient dialogue between heaven and earth. The voices of the faithful remind mankind that true wisdom begins in reverence, while the echoes of the fallen still whisper that man alone is the measure of all things. The battle that began with the Watchers has never truly ceased. It moves within the thoughts of humanity, unseen yet powerful, shaping the course of history and the destiny of souls. Every age faces the same choice. Whether to use knowledge to build or to destroy, to rise toward light or sink into shadow. And within that choice lies the very heart of what it means to be human. Across the ages, the memory of the Watchers faded into myth, yet their essence continued to flow through the undercurrents of human advancement. The same longing that once drew them from heaven now stirs within modern minds, clothed in the garments of technology and progress. Humanity, reaching toward the infinite, builds towers of light and circuits of thought, each new discovery reflecting that ancient desire to transcend mortal limits. Yet within that pursuit, the same echo can be heard, the restless whisper that says, "You can become as gods." Cities glow like constellations upon the earth, and eyes of glass and metal gaze from every corner, watching without rest. Humanity has surrounded itself with its own creations, instruments that see without blinking, that record without mercy. Satellites orbit above like sentinels of steel, mirroring the gaze of the Watchers who once looked down from the heavens. The world has become transparent, every secret illuminated, yet true wisdom remains hidden. The more humanity learns to see, the less it understands what it means to be seen. Knowledge has multiplied beyond imagination. Machines now think, speak, and learn, reflecting the intelligence once reserved for angels. Artificial minds, created in man's image, echo the ancient pattern of creation itself. Yet pride lingers within this progress, for in crafting intelligence, humanity once again reaches for divine authority. The boundaries between creation and creator blur, and the line between wisdom and hubris begins to vanish. What was once celestial rebellion now unfolds through human innovation. Science peers into the code of life, rearranging the patterns that define existence. DNA, the script of creation, is now rewritten by mortal hands. The power to heal and the power to alter have become inseparable, and within that power lies both hope and peril. Every advancement feels like a step toward godhood, yet each step brings humanity closer to the same precipice that the Watchers once crossed. The temptation to perfect what was already called good still whispers in the laboratories of the world. Eyes of surveillance extend far beyond walls and borders. The planet hums with invisible networks that trace every movement, every word, every thought shared in the digital ether. Mankind has created its own order of watchers, unblinking, tireless, everywhere at once. Yet unlike the celestial guardians of old, these eyes do not protect, they control, they do not guide, they gather. Humanity has become both the watcher and the watched, caught within the web of its own creation. In this modern age, the spiritual echoes of the ancient rebellion manifest not through angels of light, but through data and algorithms. The desire to know all things, to possess all truth, has become an obsession woven into the very fabric of society. Knowledge has become its own idol, worshipped in the temples of technology. The price of such worship is subtle yet immense, the gradual erosion of humility, the quiet silencing of awe. Voices still speak of progress as salvation, yet progress without reverence repeats the ancient pattern of downfall. The Watchers once believed their knowledge could uplift humanity, yet their light became a consuming flame. Humanity now stands in their place, holding that same fire within its hands, uncertain whether it will bring illumination or destruction. Through the ceaseless hum of machines, through the glow of endless screens, a question rises like a prayer, lost in static. Has the world rebuilt the tower that once fell, only this time with circuits instead of stone? The eyes that never sleep may not belong to heaven anymore, but their gaze carries the same warning. The knowledge of all things is not the same as the wisdom to use it. Every truth carries two reflections, one bathed in light, the other veiled in shadow. The teachings of the Watchers, though condemned as forbidden, were not born entirely of malice. Within their knowledge lay both the spark of creation and the seed of corruption. Humanity, shaped by both curiosity and caution, inherited the burden of choosing how to wield that knowledge. History has shown that wisdom and destruction often share the same origin. Light of understanding has always been a sacred gift, meant to draw the heart closer to the divine. Yet when knowledge is separated from humility, it becomes a weapon rather than a blessing. The Watchers revealed truths that could have guided mankind toward harmony, yet their fall distorted those truths into tools of pride. What began as enlightenment became ensnarement. The same stars that could inspire worship of the Creator were turned into idols of fate. The same metals that could build altars became instruments of war. Every age repeats this pattern in new form. Knowledge leads to prosperity, then to arrogance, then to ruin. The inventions of the mind outpace the discernment of the spirit. Humanity builds wonders only to bow before them. The Watchers taught humanity to look upward, but pride turned those eyes inward. The line between divine curiosity and forbidden ambition remains as thin as it was before the flood. The dual nature of knowledge lies not in the content of what is known, but in the intent of the one who seeks it. When truth is pursued with reverence, it becomes illumination. When pursued with greed, it becomes deception. Angels once fell for believing they could hold divine knowledge apart from divine obedience. Humanity continues to wrestle with that same illusion, mistaking intelligence for wisdom and progress for purpose. Wisdom is not the accumulation of facts, but the alignment of the soul with truth. Knowledge can build great cities, but only wisdom can build peace. The Watcher's story serves as a mirror, reflecting what happens when understanding is divorced from morality. Every lesson they imparted holds a warning. Light without guidance blinds the eyes it was meant to open. Yet within their teachings also lies evidence of divine mercy. Even what was misused can lead to awakening. The arts, sciences, and philosophies that grew from forbidden roots have, through time, revealed glimpses of the Creator's design. Humanity, through its failures, learns humility. The corruption of knowledge becomes the soil from which repentance and rediscovery grow. What was once the curse of the Watchers has, through grace, become a path toward deeper awareness of the sacred balance between knowing and being. Light and shadow coexist in every revelation. The stars that guided ancient travelers could also lure them astray. The same fire that warms the body can consume it. Knowledge, too, is that fire. It is not the flame that destroys, but the hand that wields it without reverence. The story of the Watchers endures not only as condemnation, but as invitation to seek wisdom that does not rebel, to learn in the spirit of love rather than pride. Every soul who seeks understanding stands where the Watchers once stood, on the edge between heaven's light and its shadow. The choice remains the same as it was before the first fall: to use knowledge as a bridge to the divine, or a ladder towards self-exaltation. That choice, made in silence by every heart that yearns to know, continues to shape the destiny of the world. Prophecies speak of a time when the boundaries between the seen and unseen will weaken once more, when forces long bound beneath the earth will stir again. The Watchers, who once defied heaven's decree, remain imprisoned in the depths, yet their influence has never fully vanished. Ancient writings hint that their spirits, or those like them, will rise again to deceive nations and prepare the world for a final confrontation between divine order and rebellion. The story of their fall may yet find its reflection in the age to come. Scripture describes an era when knowledge will increase beyond measure. when mankind will run to and fro across the earth, seeking understanding but finding confusion. The hearts of many will grow proud, believing themselves beyond the need for God. In that pride, the door once sealed may open again, not through descent of angels, but through awakening of the same rebellion within human hearts. The watchers need not return in form, for their spirit lives wherever truth is twisted into vanity. Apocalyptic visions tell of beings that ascend from the abyss, of deceivers clothed in brilliance, offering salvation through power and intellect. Their words will echo those ancient promises once whispered to humanity before the flood: knowledge, freedom, mastery of destiny. Yet beneath that promise lies the same darkness. The return of the Watchers is not merely the release of celestial prisoners, it is the resurgence of the idea that man can rule without reverence, that wisdom can exist apart from the divine. Across history, false lights have appeared, movements born from brilliance but rooted in pride. Prophets have warned of this awakening, a resurgence of the old rebellion disguised as enlightenment. When mankind once again reaches too far into the heavens, seeking to rewrite creation itself, the ancient covenant of disobedience is renewed. The age of the Watchers repeats itself, not through beings descending from the sky, but through humanity rising beyond its appointed bounds. Signs already echo through the world: the blending of flesh and machine, the pursuit of immortality through science, the creation of intelligence that mimics spirit. The very boundaries that once defined humanity begin to dissolve, and the ancient temptation whispers louder. What began in Eden, what was reignited on Mount Hermon, finds new life in laboratories and digital realms. The forbidden knowledge once taught in secret is now pursued openly, celebrated as progress. Prophecy speaks not only of darkness, but of revelation. Even as deception grows, so too does truth. The final confrontation between light and shadow will not be a battle of might, but of wisdom. The same question that shaped the fall of the Watchers will shape the destiny of the world. Will knowledge serve the Creator, or will it seek to replace him? The answer will determine the course of all things. The rising of the Watchers, whether literal or spiritual, represents the culmination of humanity's long journey toward self-deification. It is the echo of rebellion, meeting its reflection in human ambition. Yet even this, as ancient writings suggest, may be part of the greater design, a final unveiling of every hidden motive, every secret desire, before the restoration of all things. Those who remember the story of the Watchers look to the horizon with both awe and caution. The light of the end times may shine brighter than ever before, but within that brilliance, the old shadows move again. The same eyes that once watched humanity from the stars may yet behold its final choice. Among the deepest mysteries of creation lies the question of why heaven permitted rebellion to unfold. The fall of the Watchers was not hidden from divine sight, nor was it an unforeseen tragedy. Every act, every descent, every moment of defiance was known before it came to pass. Yet the heavens did not intervene until the appointed time. This silence has stirred wonder for generations. Why would perfection allow imperfection to bloom? Rebellion, though grievous, revealed something that obedience alone could never show: the depth of divine mercy. The fall of the Watchers unveiled the boundaries of freedom within creation, showing that even angels possess the choice to love or to leave the light. Without that freedom, love would be mere design, not devotion. Their fall, tragic as it was, became a mirror reflecting the preciousness of willing faith. The descent of the Watchers also served as a revelation to humanity. Through their failure, mankind was given the living example of what happens when divine gifts are used apart from divine purpose. Their punishment revealed justice, but their story revealed grace. Even as they were bound, the lessons of their fall became the foundation upon which humanity would learn humility. Creation itself learned through their rebellion. Angels who remained faithful saw the consequence of disobedience, and humanity saw the fragility of pride. The flood that followed did not merely cleanse the earth, it cleansed understanding, reminding all living beings that knowledge without love leads only to emptiness. In allowing rebellion, heaven allowed truth to become visible through contrast. The existence of the Watcher's fall also unveiled the patience of the Creator. Rather than erase them from being, he chose to let time bear witness to the consequences of their choices. This patience is not weakness, but wisdom. Through it, every creature learns that redemption requires awareness, that understanding cannot come without experience of both good and evil. Divine purpose often hides behind tragedy. What appears as ruin in the eyes of creation may serve as revelation in the eyes of eternity. The Watcher's story became the soil in which the concept of redemption could take root. Their fall prepared the stage for grace to be understood. By showing what happens when love abandons obedience, they made clear what salvation would one day restore. Even the sorrow of the Watchers served a higher good. Their longing for forgiveness, though unanswered until judgment, mirrors the longing of every soul that has strayed. Through them, humanity can glimpse the weight of divine justice and the immeasurable depth of mercy that follows. The silence of heaven during their descent was not neglect but preparation, a pause before revelation, allowing the universe to witness the full measure of freedom's cost. Their story teaches that nothing in creation, not even rebellion, lies beyond the reach of divine purpose. Every fall becomes a lesson, every sorrow a seed of wisdom. The Watcher's defiance, though it tore the fabric of heaven and earth, also became the thread through which the pattern of redemption would one day be woven. Their failure did not mark the triumph of darkness, but the unfolding of a plan that would illuminate even the deepest abyss. Long after their chains were sealed and the flood had passed, the memory of the Watchers endured like a faint star in the depths of history. Their fall became a story told not merely as warning, but as revelation. A message about the unending tension between knowledge and faith, power and obedience, freedom and grace. Humanity, shaped by their influence and scarred by their mistakes, continued its search for meaning beneath the same heavens that once bore witness to their descent. Yet from that brokenness, a greater truth began to emerge, that even rebellion could serve the purpose of redemption. Creation itself seemed to remember. The mountains that once echoed with the cries of the fallen now stood silent beneath the sun, as if awaiting reconciliation. The earth had borne both the weight of corruption and the cleansing of renewal. Through the ages, divine mercy revealed that no fall, however great, could overshadow the Creator's intention to restore. The Watchers, though bound, became symbols of what happens when love strays from obedience, and of the grace that waits beyond judgment. Humanity, unlike the angels, was granted a gift the Watchers were not: redemption through faith. Though both heaven and earth had witnessed rebellion, only humankind was given the chance to rise again through forgiveness. This was not because humanity was less guilty, but because it was still incomplete. The divine plan had woven into human nature the possibility of renewal, the chance to turn away from pride and return to harmony. The story of the Watchers revealed the contrast between divine justice and divine mercy, teaching that the heart willing to repent is never beyond restoration. Through prophets and sacred writings, heaven continued to call humanity toward remembrance. Each act of rebellion recorded in history became another reflection of the same truth, that no knowledge, no power, no wisdom apart from love can endure. The Watchers had sought to share their light without the guidance of the divine, but through their fall, the world came to understand the necessity of humility before wisdom. Their tragedy became the foundation for understanding grace itself. For only when light falls into shadow does the true value of illumination appear. Every generation carries within it the same longing that once stirred the Watchers, to know, to rise, to reach beyond the limits of flesh and time. Yet the lesson remains unchanged. Wisdom without reverence leads to ruin, but wisdom guided by love leads to life. The story of their rebellion, imprisonment and sorrow becomes a mirror for the human soul, showing that every fall contains the possibility of awakening. The path of restoration begins not with knowledge, but with surrender, the recognition that true understanding flows from the Creator alone. Even in their silence, the Watchers bear witness to a truth larger than their own story. Their fall reminds the universe that divine love is not extinguished by rebellion, but refined through it. Justice binds, yet mercy waits. The same God who cast them down also wove their story into the tapestry of redemption, using even their failure to reveal the power of forgiveness. In this, the Watchers serve not merely as caution, but as promise, that light once lost can be found again, and what was once broken can be made whole. The final lesson of the Watchers is not one of despair, but of hope. They remind creation that no distance is too great for the reach of grace, and no darkness too deep for the return of light. Their story began with defiance, but ends with understanding. That knowledge without love leads only to ruin, but love, even after ruin, can lead back to wisdom. The heavens that once witnessed their fall now shine upon a world still learning the meaning of redemption. As the ages turn, the echo of their story still whispers to every heart that seeks understanding. It calls not to forbidden mountains or hidden mysteries, but to the quiet truth within, the realization that wisdom begins where pride ends, and that restoration begins where surrender is found. The Watcher's tale is not merely a memory of divine rebellion, but a living testament to the eternal truth that grace outlasts judgment, and light, even when veiled by shadow, can never be extinguished. If this story has spoken to your heart, let it continue to live through your voice. Subscribe to the channel to stay connected with more stories that uncover the mysteries of faith, light, and redemption. Like this video to help it reach others who seek understanding, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Your reflections help keep this community alive with conversation and insight. Finally, share this video with your friends and loved ones, so that together you may explore the truths that continue to shape the soul of humanity.